Drawing is one of the oldest forms of human expression within the visual arts. The same materials that artists are using today are very similar to ones that were used in cave paintings and the earliest drawings that we know of in art history. We've all drawn at one time or another. Maybe that was with a stick in the sand at the beach, or maybe with a finger making a drawing across a foggy window. But as children, we all take to drawing very naturally as a way to entertain ourselves and as a way to express ourselves. Drawing at its most basic definition is the use of a tool to create a line or a mark across a surface. You'll notice that that is a basic and pretty wide open definition. In the most traditional sense, the drawing tool could be a pencil, it could be a pen, it could be a piece of charcoal, chalk, ink, or other liquid media. Artists today use many non-traditional materials that explore the boundaries of what we typically think of as drawing, including digital media, iPads, virtual and augmented realities, and the recent boom of options for using AI for visual and creative purposes has great potential to expand that even further. Drawing serves many purposes. Sometimes the final form of an idea will be the form of drawing, and at other times, drawing is an important tool for recording events or developing ideas. There are several categories of drawing, including figure drawing, cartooning, doodling, and freehand drawing, for example. Most people working in the visual arts use drawing as a tool for visual thinking. Drawing as a tool for visual thinking. That is, developing ideas and then recording those ideas, problem solving those ideas. In this way, the drawing conveys the artist's imaginings and the artist's observations. So in the slide that we're looking at right now, we see a drawing by Matisse to the left-hand side of your screen. This is a drawing type known as a line drawing, where the majority of the expression of the artwork comes from simple lines and line quality, line characteristics. This category of drawing is called a figure drawing because the figure is the subject of the work. So line is the primary means of expression, and we can see almost subtle variations of the line work. It seems to hesitate or shimmer. There are places where a line has stopped and then repeated in a new location. And so this allows us to really see the hand of the artist at work there. So it might not have been something really obvious because the drawing at first glance could look very simple. But what we know is that this image reflects Matisse's cultivation of a unique style. Many drawings like Matisse's were never intended to be included in an exhibition. Sargent's use of line in the second example that we were looking at on screen, it's also a line draw. It's also a use of line in a drawing, but it's meant to capture motion, the motion of a dancer and the motion of her costume. We can tell from the title of given the drawing, Sketch of a Dancer, right? So this type of drawing is called a sketch. A sketch is generally a loose, relatively unrefined drawing. Preliminary sketches for paintings or sculptures are ones where ideas are quickly jotted down for later development. So this drawing by Sargent does a little bit of all of those things. He drew the sketch of the dancer as he watched the live performance, capturing the movement of the woman's body, her dress, her shawl, in a type of drawing that we now know as gesture drawing. But he later translated this and other drawings from his sketchbook into a series of paintings of dancers. Contemporary artist Shazia Sikander uses line, shading, and shape in ranges of gray and black in 51 ways of looking. This drawing has characteristics that look like doodling, but is actually a much more complex image with many layers that is meant to be understood as the final artwork. So of the three that we're looking at on screen, we know that the final work of the ideas of the artist were meant to be expressed in drawing form. Sikander is not interested in merely making literal reproductions of her observations or her ideas. She employs graphic line work, shapes, and geometric patterns, along with fragments of figurative images in layers that merge in and out of our focus as we work our way through the image. Fields outside of art, quote unquote, use drawing as well. So engineers and woodworkers who are thinking their way through a design may use drawing to make a plan for something that will be completed later in a different material. Illustrators, cartoonists, animators, and graphic novelists all use drawing in one way or another as the basis of the work, but the final output of the drawing is in print or video form. At the most basic level, drawing is an immediate and accessible way of seeing and communicating. It is a way of paying attention. In 1940, the British artist Henry Moore was appointed the official war artist and was commissioned by the War Artists Advisory Committee to execute drawings of life of Londoners in underground bomb shelters during World War II. One evening in autumn 1940, Moore took cover from an air raid in the Belsize Park underground station. Looking around at the people sheltering there, he became fascinated by the sight of people camping out deep underground. On returning to his studio, he made some drawings from memory. When Kenneth Clark, chairman of the War Artists Advisory Committee, saw the pictures, he commissioned further drawings and appointed Moore an official war artist. From 1940 to 1943, the artist concentrated almost entirely on drawings that now serve as documents of a historic event. These drawings were exhibited for the first time in 1941. They were often interpreted as metaphors for the stoic kind of resistance of the British people in the face of war. A great deal of drawing is receptive drawing. That is, we use it to attempt to capture the physical appearance of something before us. Some of us show an exceptional ability for this type of drawing as children, but many artists had to develop it, including artists like Paul Cézanne and Vincent van Gogh, who we're looking at now in this slide. Van Gogh struggled with drawing. He believed, though, that he had to master it before allowing himself to use color. So he studied and practiced from drawing from life as a way to develop his technical skill and also to capture the mood and the energy of his subjects. And we can see that quality in both of these drawings, but maybe to a little bit of a different degree. They were completed 2 years apart. The Old Man with His Head in His Hands, made 2 years after Carpenter, shows that Van Gogh made great progress in seeing and drawing in those years. And we can see this in terms of just the basics of proportion. So do the parts of the body feel like they're all in the right size in relationship to each other? We can see this in terms of the gesture. In other words, both of these figures are performing an action of some kind, and that action contains a sense of what it's like at that moment in time to be this human being, right? So both artists can be said to deal with those two things, but they deal with them in very different ways. By the time Van Gogh drew Old Man with His Head in His Hands, he was able to portray the old man's grief and to give a realistic and spatial suggestion to his surroundings. He uses groups of parallel lines to communicate the solidity of the figure, and we can see these on the sleeves of the shirt. We can also see them on the pants legs as well as on the ground, right? These appear to have been drawn quickly and with both sensitivity and self-assurance. Sensitivity and self-assurance working together. So there's this kind of confidence, but there's also an openness and a receptiveness to the subject. And both of those things play a role in the mature look of the drawing from 1882. Other drawings, in contrast, are more projective, meaning they are more imagination-based. We may draw something that only exists in our minds. That could be a memory of something, or something that we have a vision about, or something that we imagine. British artist Anthony Gormley, for example, said, "Drawing is my way of discovering what is possible." Artists whose work is based on imagination often use this sort of drawing, as do architects when they plan new structures. So projecting into what something can be. Right? We're looking at an example of a drawing by Zaha Hadid, who was a visionary architect, businesswoman, and a teacher who left behind extraordinary works of art and architecture. She became the first individual woman awarded the Royal Gold Medal from the Royal Institute of British Architects. Her design inspiration comes from observing nature, people, and the city. In one of her interviews, Hadid said, "People ask, why are there no straight lines? Why no 90 degrees in your work?" So take a look at the Vitra fire station, the photograph of it in the bottom of your screen here. Why are there no straight lines, no 90 degrees in your work? "This is because life is not made on a grid," was her response. Hadid finished the Vitra fire station in Weil am Rhein, Germany, one of the most important works from her early career. It is also the first time Hadid transformed her vibrant and experimental two-dimensional images into three-dimensional architecture. So the first time one of her experimental designs was actually realized in terms of an actual building. The painting that we're looking at, the gouache and pencil study for the fire station, is notable for the way that it points and extends. It appears to expand and lengthen the space itself. That's a quality that we see both in the drawing on paper and in the facade of the picture at the bottom of your screen. Hadid's daring composition produced a building with a sense of tension and movement. Still, it also serves a practical purpose. The multifaceted exterior allows for multiple entrances and exits for firefighters and vehicles. This emphasis on fluid motion can be seen from the first painting and all the way through to the finished fire station. These pencil and ink depictions are not fantastical dreamscapes, but the brainchildren of Santiago Ramon y Cajal, the father of neuroscience and once an aspiring artist. Armed with a rudimentary microscope by today's standards and drawing implements more usually found in an art studio than in a biology laboratory, Cajal set out to disentangle and catalog the brain's neuronal wildlife. Drawing as a process to coming to understand something and then creating a record of that understanding. When I look at these drawings and I know the context, which was the artist's intention behind the work and the time period in which it was made, I can see them for his intention, but I also see these as wonderful abstractions with variations in line quality, different kinds of movement, a very sensitive sense of the way the pencil travels across the texture of the paper. So drawing as a preparatory tool or preliminary sketches is a traditional use of drawing in Western art. We're looking at an example from Michelangelo, who made detailed studies of the reclining male nude for his finished painting of the figure on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, The Creation of Adam. Michelangelo's studies are a record of his exploration and discovery as he drew what he carefully observed. These in particular are studies of anatomy and the way the anatomy and the gesture of the body relate to each other. His knowledge of anatomy definitely helped him to define each muscle. The flow between the head, the shoulders, and the arms of the figure is based on Michelangelo's feeling for visual continuity, though, as well as his attention to detail. The parts of the figure that he felt needed study, he drew repeatedly, right? So further study to solve a problem. We can see that in the repetition of the hands in the background. And even if you look at the bent knee where the elbow is resting, there are several lines where Michelangelo seems to be seeking for the right contour line for the form of the musculature there. To achieve the dark reds with the chalk that he used to make this drawing, Michelangelo evidently licked the point of the chalk. Preliminary sketches are not generally considered finished pieces, although they are certainly oftentimes beautiful to look at and are treasured for this reason, for not only their beauty as sketches or drawings, but also for how they reveal to us the artist's thinking process, design process, or the development of a work of art. In such drawings, an artist can work out problems of overall design or can concentrate on small details, as we saw with the Michelangelo drawing in the previous slide. Picasso did many studies in preparation for his major painting, Guernica, a huge work measuring more than 11 by 25 feet. The first drawing for Guernica shows Picasso working out the rhythms and the movement of the design in a very general and loose sense. The second drawing that we're looking at here shows a dark form at the top center. If we look at the major artwork, this later would become a woman with a lamp, apparently an important symbol to Picasso. The woman leans out of the house in the upper right, and on the left appears a bull with a bird on its back. Both the bull and the woman with the lamp are major elements in the final painting. The first drawing was completed in a few seconds, yet its quick gestural lines contain the essence of the large, complex painting. 45 of Picasso's composition studies are preserved and dated, and they show the evolution of this incredibly important work. Cartoon is another word for preparatory drawings, and there's a specific transfer process for this type of cartoon that we're going to talk about. So it's different than the original meaning of cartoon. It's different from the cartoon that we typically think of, which usually has a humorous or political commentary or satirical purpose in newspapers and other sources, right? So this is a different kind of cartoon. This is a full-size drawing that is made as a guide for a larger work meant to be executed in a different medium. These are particularly used for large works like murals, mosaics, or tapestries. In making the final work, artists often use such cartoons as overlays for tracing. A preparatory cartoon drawing allows the artist to solve technical and artistic problems prior to executing the artwork in its final form. Raphael started with a full-scale preparatory cartoon in charcoal, red and white chalk on paper in 1508, 1509 for the School of Athens. It was massive, over 9 feet high and 26 feet wide, and was made by gluing together 210 pieces of royal paper. Royal paper was at the time large format sheets, about 12 by 16 inches in dimension. He used the cartoon as a literal outline, poking holes that are still clearly visible today through the lines of the faces, the garments, the folds, and the bodies, all of the major information that he would want to have translated to the surface of the painting. He would then take dry powdered color of either charcoal or another suitable color, depending on where the image is being transferred, and wrap it in a cloth, creating a pounce. So the fine dust is then tapped through the pinholes of the original drawing, transferring it to the actual location on the final surface for the work. So pounce, to pounce on or to pounce through the poked holes in the tracing. Because the completed cartoon was so massive, it could not be applied smoothly all at once to the plaster surface of the wall and have the trace over last for the 2 years that it took to make this painting. Raphael instead used it to show a clear view of the full complex composition of the fresco and as a master template, drawing through the perforations onto individual papers just large enough to cover one day's work. In today's common usage, cartoon also refers to narrative drawings, emphasizing humorous or satirical content. Cartoons and comics are among the most widely enjoyed types of drawings and will be discussed later on in the chapter. So we find ourselves here with an optional topic for reflection. Are artists born to draw? Is drawing a learned skill or a natural talent? What are your beliefs as far as this question? I'll give you some time to ponder that. In episode 2, we'll begin our deep dive into the techniques and tools and processes of drawing.